When we were online, it was like this. It's so bad, but anyway, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to lose weight. So I kind of, when I was thinking about, okay, we're going to meet again and let's have a nice, fluffy, uplifting sermon. But I don't know about you, but when I think about what is going on in our world right now, the stress that it is under, it can't be taken lightly. It has to be dealt with up front, because we're all dealing with a couple of big issues, worldwide issues, and it's in your face all the time, and we're aware of it all the time, and so I think trying to just ignore it and just so we can feel better probably isn't going to be wise. So there's two main issues, and the first is, of course, the COVID thing. Jen, that was very insightful about the voting. We didn't have bulletins, and nobody's going to say we don't have coffee and everything, but we hand out. Yeah, that was brilliant. So this COVID thing is disrupting our lives. So that's one thing. But there's also now this reaction to racial issues, and it has kind of filled up our world, that this is a big, major issue. So the protests about the abuse of power and the videos and stuff that we're seeing, it's in the news all the time, and it's in our awareness all the time. So I feel forced, in a way, to deal with all this social anger and what our response should be, or what our perspective should be with this. Because these things are valid. They're issues. They've always been issues. So I'm going to repeat something that I taught last year. It's an uncomfortable subject. But racism is just such an ugly thing. And I want to widen it. I want to widen the discussion here because racism is based on this war between us and them, whoever them is, whoever the other is. And I think it's important to realize that it's not just about color or ethnicity. It goes much, much deeper than that. Our society has identified a wrong. We've always known that it is there. And right now, some of the things that have been done in the dark have been now revealed in the light. We have pictures and videos and these sorts of things, and so now it's in your face. Everybody knew, I think, that there was corruption. There's corruption on all levels of society. There's corruption of the abuse of power or the taking advantage of power. But now there's something about it that is a visceral response. It's a gut response. Now everything is recorded, and it wasn't before. So now the things that were done in the dark are done in the light. And I want to talk a little bit here just about the Nuremberg trials. It happened after the Second World War. The biggest war crimes, these criminals were taken and put on trial in Nuremberg. And the trials went on for a long time, and everybody knew from the evidence that was given from eyewitnesses and everybody knew what the horrors were. Everybody could understand what was taking place with the Germany and the SS and the concentration camps. Everybody knew. But I think it was the Russians that found, because the Germans recorded literally everything. They found the pictures, the film and the pictures of the atrocities that were going on. And that was brought to the trial. And then all of a sudden it switched. All of a sudden, because these people could see for themselves what was going on. And they were tried and convicted, and many of them put to death. Even now, there have been similar atrocities happening. During and after the war, Stalin killed millions and millions of his own people, but we don't have pictures. So we're not as aware. But everybody has those pictures in their heads of the concentration camps. And I just bring this up because right now we're dealing with this powerful response, this emotional response. And it's evident all over the world. And we watch it on television and we see these things these atrocities that have happened forever. But now we see them. And now everybody's taking pictures of them. And so now there's an outrage. And I bring that up because videos are like an attachment to an event, a strong attachment to an event. And when we have that strong attachment to an event, we feel guilty, we feel connected to it, we feel responsible in some way. But each generation does this same thing. They look back on what has happened in the past and they judge. So all these statues that are being torn down and renaming of institutions and stuff, because these people in the past, 150 years ago, were evil. They did evil things. But we know better, don't we? We have been improving year after year, decade after decade, century after century. There has been a sense that the world is getting to be a better place. And in order to fix the problems, we have identified the problem as stupidity and ignorance. But the problem is that what we don't see is our own stupidity and our own ignorance. We always like to condemn those who have gone before us. And I wonder if the people who are tearing down statues and saying, well, these people owned slaves and these people did this and these people did that, understand that they're talking about their own ancestors, their own great-great-grandfather, their own community. Because there's a disassociation from the guy in the statue and myself. I'm not attached to that. I get to condemn it. And what our culture does not see is our own sins. we just seem to be unaware of them. And that is because the way our culture views itself has changed. Now, again, an example from history. The end of the 1800s, with all the science and all the things that were being discovered, there was a sense that mankind was reaching a point of perfection. We can do anything. We can raise skyscrapers, we can heal, we're dealing with medicine, and things are getting better, and eventually we're going to have a perfect world. And the main problem that we have is a matter of ignorance. If we knew more, we would be better. That was part of the Art Deco movement. It was just full of energy, and people can see in the future that it was just always going to be better. And then World War I happened. And all the technology got put into fighting machines, killing machines. And then World War II happened. And the same thing happened. And at the end of the Second World War, there was almost a depression that happened all around the world. All the cultures were going, well, maybe this isn't working, and we end up with a great deal of cynicism. I could go on and on about that. But then we hit the 60s, and the 60s was another little jolt of, oh, things are going to get better, we're going to bring peace and love, and we're going to do that way through tearing down the old institutions, ignoring the things that were in the past, the stodgy old people. We're the youth. We're gonna be different. We're gonna get rid of the old ways. We're gonna shuffle off. I know it began with an S. The morals that bound society. We weren't going to be moral anymore. We were just going to be loving and peaceful, and that was going to be our morality. It was going to be the age of Aquarius. We're turning into new creatures. And then the 80s and 90s happened, and it all slumped down into greed and that kind of thing. One more example. Star Trek. Star Trek came out in the mid-60s, I think, and the Gene Roddenberry was depicting a future where racism didn't exist. There were all sorts of different nationalities represented on the in the characters, and they were going out around, and it was peaceful, and they were just exploring, and there was no employment, there was no work, there were no wars and everything, and they kind of mentioned many times how you could look back and see, oh, they were just so awful back then. They were ignorant. But as that show goes on, and you get into the Babylon 5 and then the second generation and everything, they intentionally added a darker side to the show, where there were wars, there were conflicts, there was greed, there was all this kind of stuff happening. And they did that because it didn't represent any kind of reality. The cynicism of the 80s and 90s, saying, well, that doesn't work, was caught by the writers of Star Trek. Anyway, the flaws of mankind were written into the script. there have been good changes that have happened. Nobody wants to go back to what we were with the issues that are dealt with. Nobody wants to go back there. We've made steps in the right direction, but also the divorce rate is higher, abortion is higher, pornography is rampant. Now, if I went out and started a conversation at the subway about these things, people would be very upset with me, because those are not viewed as particular sins. The way we use our money, the way we use our wealth. Our society is just full of sins, but they're not the right sins that we need to get excited about. So it becomes difficult to challenge the sins of our culture when people don't want to hear about it because they're dealing with these other sins. Whenever we start to think that we are better than others, we find out that we are not. And society and social awareness will not fix us.